Go ahead. I'll just cut this part out. What?
Oh, I was gonna show you. I did have a mail call come in.
What is that? Wait. Let me blow this up. What is that?
From The Expanse.
Oh, it's the Rocinante. I didn't see that. I
Yep.
thought it was a P. I was like, oh, that's phenomenal. Where did you get that from?
Amazon for like $6.
What?
And
That's awesome.
they had a library of colors, and I picked the most obnoxious one.
No, I
because
think it's cool.
I tend to buy black hats, and I leave them places, and then I never see them again. So this is a lot harder for me to leave on a seat and not notice.
So I'm about to do that with my phone case because at work I can't take my phone inside, and so we set it on this locker, and everyone's phone cases are black. I'm like, I'm gonna get a Hello Kitty one so it'll stand out. Like it's ridiculous, but
That's
no,
why
that's
I have
phenomenal.
I have Hello Kitty on my my get home bag. Because are you really gonna take from the big 300-pound guy with the Hello Kitty bag on his back?
Who knows what's in there?
Yeah.
Man, I feel that on the topic of story building and or storytelling and world building and characters and lore, like honestly, an hour doesn't cut it. Like you could just continuously talk about world building, and I feel like every time that we talk to people, it's on their station and on their lore, which is great. What we never really talk about is the process of actually world building something. You kind of tipped into that with like the characters and how you have like, well, I put this ascot in here too, but how do you go about world building?
I create problems.
Oh, okay. You're chaotic. You're chaotic neutral then.
I create a problem or an opportunity that needs a solution and work my way from there. So if I wanted a gunslinger, I thought to myself, yep, I want somebody who's like that not neutral, but natural good cowboy, man in the white hat. And I thought to myself, well, how do I do that? And so I just build from there, and I say, okay, I pick this Ithorian because why wouldn't an Ithorian be a gunslinger? That's not, limited to people. And then just from there, I worked on different pieces, and I'm like, well, he's going to need a translator because he's going to have to talk to people. What kind of trope can I give him? What kind of gimmick? Yeah. He doesn't have a memory, so he doesn't remember why he's this wandering gunslinger. And just from there, the character evolved, and now he serves a purpose of serving up his version of justice and gimmick while he tries to figure out what exactly is going on with his mind.
So you start with the conflict and build backwards, whereas a lot of people will see like, what can I use this guy as? Like, oh, I got this cool thing, let me build. You start with a spark of an idea and then try to find the figure that'll fit into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And then so you built a character. So again, I did not appreciate role-playing games as a teenager, even in my 20s and early 30s, because I just thought, I was like, this seems just stupid and nerdy. And then when I started actually looking under the hood, I was like, I was wrong. This is storytelling that you get to play. Like, I was completely wrong about it. So I use that in reference a lot when I talk about stuff, because I started DMing. I was like, oh, this is phenomenal. But a lot of people will enjoy the aspect of making a character. Like, they don't actually have any intention of playing the characters. Like, I just like making characters. But for you have made a conflict and a character. Does that come first and then the story kind of wraps around it, or do you have a story and a world and then you're seeding characters into it?
For me, I guess in the case of gimmick, exclusively talking about gimmick,
sure,
I have the world and I need to populate it.
Okay.
So I look at the world and I say, okay, I've got doors and apartments and windows and streets. Okay, I need markings, or else people aren't going to know. It's going to be willy-nilly and crashing. So no vehicles can go past this point, so I'll put lines here. I've created that, and they say, okay, well, people got to eat. And so I reached out to Grime City, and I knew that he was doing 118 little fish vending machines, which reminded me of the fish biscuit machines from Lost.
Yeah.
So I had to have one.
I never made that connection.
And I was like, okay, well, not everybody can eat fish biscuits and eat little fish. What else can I do? So I had a gonk droid that only half resin printed on my resin printer, and I had been using it as just a little labor droid. And I'm like, what if I stick like a grill on his back? Because I had seen at Galaxy's Edge, they had an R unit, just a little R unit body with a grill on top of it, and they were using it to cook. So I was like, well, yeah, all right, cool. So this guy's going to be a little mobile grill that can walk and goes wherever they tell him to. And just things evolve from there. Now I need people to operate this grill. I create problems for myself and then come up with the solutions for it. When I made the little miniature of our cat Azrael, I said, all right, I want her to be a vendor of some sort because people are going to want to buy stuff at a starport. Like, even when you go to an airport.
Who's Azcat? I don't know Star Wars that deeply. Who's that?
Azrael is our one of our cats.
Oh, so okay.
A miniature, yeah. I came across They usually come in the Japanese vending machines. However, a lot of stores sell them in little boxes. And it was a black and white cat that kind of favored her, but I got in there with some paint, really spent the time like holding her up and like her fighting me so I could look at her belly, like, let me see your tummy, hang on.
So dedicated.
Yeah, dedicated to the craft and got it to look just like her. And it's just a cat sitting there holding a cup of coffee. And that's just how I pictured her if she was working in a store, just holding her coffee, like, please just buy something and leave. Just buy something and leave. And so that's what she's doing in there. But I'm like, okay, well, what's she selling? And, she likes to. My girlfriend has really nice curios and stuff, and she refurnishes furniture, and she does a phenomenal job. And Azrael likes to get on top. So I'm like, all right. So she probably likes artifacts and things like that, antiques. She likes to chew on plants, so we'll make sure that there's some plants there. And it just became like a little vending stall, like a miniature farmer's market / antique stand. And that's its own little environment there. And I put next to it a vendor who sells live creatures. So I've got giant grasshoppers from some of the Jurassic World Dominion things that came out, the locusts, as live bugs that you can either buy to feed your pet or buy them as pets. I've got one of the xenomorphs from the little, when it's not a chest burster, it's not a full-grown xenomorph, like one of those in a cage, like just all kinds of things that you can buy.
Pupa state, I think.
Yeah, a Carillion hound. I've got that in there. I've got one of those little frogs that Grogu eats in the show. I put that into a little bird cage and have that there as something an option that somebody could buy just to populate it and flesh it out. And that's world building to me. It's like I'm filling a thing that needs to be done, and I want to have more shops and more vendors. I'm actually working preliminary now. You're the first one to know about it on a noodle cart, just like a little,
awesome,
like a ramen stand, and it's going to be Godzilla themed because why wouldn't it? Why not?
I always loved the noodle guy in Fifth Element, how he like flies up to the window and he's got the open grill and everything there, and it's still shaped like the classic riverboat for me. I always loved that guy, so I always reached that I guess that aesthetic or whatever I think about it. But that's phenomenal. Godzilla noodles. You got to come up with a clever name for that.
Yeah, probably like kaiju udon or something like that. But it inspired. I have a sticker of Godzilla making noodles, and I was like, all right, cool. Like I need a Blade Runner has the White Dragon noodle bar where he was getting his ramen.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a scene that is like one of my favorite scenes in Blade Runner because just it tells you so much story beyond what Deckard is going through at that little countertop. Like just the entire world around it, Ridley Scott did a phenomenal job. Everybody that worked on that film in set dressing and everything attached, they told more story in that single frame 2-camera shot about what Los Angeles in 2019 was going to look like than they could have if they had him walking around and like, oh, we've got to go over here to get noodles. It's really crowded because everybody
show not tell. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, and that can be picked up when you look at other people's setup. So I don't want to keep using Station because there are other examples of it, but none come to mind. Well, We Talk TV. He doesn't have he calls his Area 42. So, but anyways, you can pick up on those vibes when you see if they're covered in grime, if everything's dirty, if there's pipes sticking into a balcony. That again, when you say like, hey, there's a pipe sticking into a balcony, that already frames a context for me, right? So if I were just to see that, if some poor schlub is sitting outside his balcony smoking and he's got stuff dripping on him from, or gas pumping into his face, I'm like, okay, I get where this is at. Like, this is not where I'm gonna go for a vacation. These people are just getting by with what they have to put up with.
Yep.
So snapshots like that show everything rather than actually beating someone over the head with exposition. So, and that's why I like all these big Dio setups like that. It just oozes with the character. So for me, and so I don't really talk about my ship very much. I just do recordings on it. We will do a live show where I'll actually go over my ship. But for my world building, it's not character focused first. It's large conflict focused first. What is the big overarching conflict that everyone is sucked into, and then how does that ripple out, and what do they bring into this conflict? So I'm very war based. So like for that's why I built a military ship instead of a starport, and why the boys and I have modular walls, right? So I made a bunch of modular walls that you can flip around, and then you stack them kind of like blocks, and you put a thing on top, and now you've got a building. But the reason why I started doing that, and why I explained to them why I don't have a starport or station, is because I'm like, hey, the military moves and campaigns cover multiple areas, and you may never go back to that spot again, and you may be invading or defending somewhere new. So I need a new scene and set for that every time. So I have to be able to break stuff down. So I don't have a one set starport. And they're like, oh, right. I don't really like that. I'm like, crap. They like the character that they always know, like the noodle shop guy. They like that idea. I'm like, yeah, but the ship is the home for that. The ship goes where and carries the units that, that kind of stuff. They're not into that though. They love all this station stuff. So we kind of do that with our adventurers though, with fantasy. There, I'm like, hey man, they're not traveling leagues to go places. They're all in a pretty general area where they're fighting over fiefdoms. So I can set up a shop that's permanent there. So that's where I lend to my more of that world building in that scale rather.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I love that you guys have these setups too. And what I really liked about yours, and what I've been dying to talk about, and what has triggered me to buy these things, the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, man, that is one thing. And Josh has dinosaurs in his too. I love the incorporation of space dinos. That's so awesome.
There is such an opportunity, especially with toy lines like Star Wars, that they don't capitalize on. They used to, have banthas, and you could get the same Rancor repackaged 3 or 4 times, even dewbacks. But now they just don't seem to capitalize on that. You think after the first season of Mandalorian, they would have had blurgs on every shelf.
I would buy those.
Yeah, and they didn't.
Yeah. They look like squibs from Warhammer 40K. I was like, oh, make those things. I want those to be for my orcs. But yeah, you're right. And I have that long neck thing from the Phantom Menace or whatever that the Jawas ride on. I still have that one. I was like, you're right. This is really cool. They kind of abandoned on that.
Yeah, be it shelf space or just the cost of plastic, or they don't want to come up with new tooling. But then the flip side is, as I looked at some of the creatures that Acid Rain sells, they're gorgeous, but man, I cannot shell out $150 for a critter that looks like a bantha. I can't do it. Whereas Jurassic, which is arguably my favorite franchise, my favorite movie of all time, my favorite book, I've probably read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park over 200 or 300 times. I will sometimes I'll read it all the way to the end and start right back at the beginning. But those toys that Mattel is putting out now are in about 1/18th scale. There is some give or take on them, but they are giant beasts. And as such, you have an opportunity to utilize those as giant beasts of burden in whatever play you have. Was it not Napoleon, but Genghis Khan had elephants in his army.
Yep.
The Indian army for the longest time still utilized camels and elephants in theirs. There's an opportunity there to use weird creatures for your forces, but there's also an ability to use them as traveling caravans, to use them as, say, something that's pulling a plow in a piece of property. My goodness, is everybody okay?
Did anything
right. break?
It's okay. It's okay.
They could be pulling a plow. They could be, carrying equipment around a shopyard. I saw Empire Toy Works. He got the 3-foot Brachiosaurus and turned it into basically he said it was like a mindless drone that's just controlled with labor. And while I have a few of those in my office, I can't fit those on gimmick. So
you have a few of those?
They went on clearance, which is how it happened.
Okay.
They went on clearance for $14, and you bet your bottom dollar I picked up two, because. And I'm waiting for the not the Giganotosaurus, the Titanosaurus Titanosaur. The newest one that is the biggest.
I thought that was
toy.
the Giganotosaurus. Was the
The,
green?
nope, that's the carnivore. I'm talking about this. It's a long blue sauropod.
Oh, yeah,
And
yes.
It is the longest dinosaur toy that I think anybody has put out. And I want one, but also for $65, I can wait a little bit.
I'm almost there. I've almost broken down and done it. And so you're right. So I pulled a couple of these off to the side here. So, yeah, you've got that. There he is. I've got
just like you. This guy looks like, something out of the Flintstones, where he could be used to pick things up or, elevate, put a ladder system on his back so somebody who's smaller can get up to work on the bottom of a ship and then turn around and go home, take him home. He's, there's opportunity here. He's armored. He could be a warrior. He could be something that fights. Like I see a lot of potential in this, and even just the sculpt. Even if I was just to say, hey, I'm gonna repaint this and have a weird dinosaur wandering around that came in from the desert. Like there's so much I could do with this, and for the price of, I think this one was $14.99 versus the $12.99 for the smaller ones. What other toy lines are you getting with brand new sculpts, articulation, noise making, movement for that price?
I was shocked by the amount of articulation. I thought it would just be like a very stiff, like Ford. They have some good outward articulation, and they've got multiple joints. It's like, you're right, for the price point, and they look really good. The sculpts are solid. So talking to the 1/18 scale, I have that same one because I didn't recognize it. I was like, what is this thing? But yeah, like here's an acid rain dude next to that thing, right? And for me though, so I love Dino Riders too, right? Like that's an easy callback, right? So putting guns on a dinosaur, and then you get to ride it. Who hasn't woken up with from that fantasy in the middle of the night, right? But for me, I was like, this is a hide that's probably thicker than leather. So I'm not going to take this in the combat because at the end of the day, a tank or an armor-piercing shell will just go right through this thing and kill it, and then I'm out however much this dinosaur was, right? So I was like, I couldn't justify it in my mind. And then Tristan was like, oh, but Dad, they're so cool. And I was like, yeah, but I've talked to you about this before too. Like you course corrected me. And I was like, yeah, but son, they're just too small for Mythic Legions. Like this is too small for Mythic Legions. Dinosaurs have to tower over these guys. But then I was like, no, they don't. They don't have to. That's still a really big imposing lizard. If I saw this,
put a saddle on that and stick an elf on its back, and now it's his steed. That's his mount.
And then I saw guys like this who instantly, my boys and I both thought the same thing. This looks like the dog,
Terror Dog,
from Ghostbusters, right? And I was like, oh, look at that thing. And I was like, son, you can't. It's too small. But I was like, no, not if it's a pet or a dog. I'm like, why wasn't I seeing this? So we have recently gone on this, hey, and you're right, the price points and sometimes get marked down. So I think he was only $6. I'm like, whoa.
He's harder to find too, so you lucked out.
Oh, really? So I got that for my son's birthday. I was like, here you go, man. We're buying more dinosaurs. And look at this. That's really deadly for a 1/18th character. I'm like, yep, that could be something they find in the waste, or it could be his pet, and that's what this gang has. Is that, and Tristan also brought up the beast of burden too. He was like, Dad, if you have a Triceratops, they already have the shell and they have this thickness, they can help with plows. And I'm like, man, you're all over this kid. And I was like, we need to talk to Famine about adding stuff onto our dinos. Yep, there you go. Yeah. There we go. Let's pull them up.
And this was actually acquired through a trade with one of the members of the Multi-Galactic Trade Route. So again,
cool.
Pays on dividends. But what I love about this, I think this is supposed to be a Sinoceratops, but it was mislabeled in the package. It was a whole thing. Is the frill, the defensive frill that was also used for mating and defense, has holes in it already. So I don't feel bad about lashing some pieces of leather there to a saddle, or even putting a set of guns behind it, or even bolt fired wooden crossbows or something behind there if I were to do a fantasy based thing. Imagine that, 5 or 6 of these running down the main line of the front of the battle, and all of a sudden not only are they charging and knocking people out of the way, you've got crossbow bolts flying
gun
out.
ports built into their mounts. That's awesome.
and it's just I got to take the batteries out of them. They make too much noise. I'm at that age, I'm
No,
36,
no,
gonna
no,
be
no. So
37
the
soon.
one with the huge claws, the really long bird-like one with the claws, it won't shut up. Every time,
Yeah.
like it's a breeze comes to the room, it goes off for like 5 minutes. I'm like, man, that is enough. So yeah, I absolutely stripped the battery out of that guy. So,
But
um,
there's plenty of opportunities. You could take a piece of foam and paint it to look like steel and put little rivets, plastic rivets on there, and have a metal plate on his horn, to protect him from impact. You can put blinders, make little blinders, take a look at a horse saddle and just make that you can make it out of cardboard and paint it. If you
mm,
want to do foam, you can do foam. I use felt and also foam. I've used pieces of leather that I've had, like, if I see on the side of the road, I'm bad for this. If I see on the side of the road, like after a flea market or yard sale or something, people like put out
yeah,
the stuff that they don't sell. If I find like an old purse or something, because I try not to contribute to the whole leather market, but if I find a purse that's sitting out there that's going to get
yeah,
thrown away or rained on, I'll bring that home. I'll cut the straps off of it, use the straps for cosplay pieces.
yeah.
And now I've got this bag with this leather. I realized I can take a knife and just cut the seams. And now I've got a sheet of leather that's been used. It's broken in, it's worn, and I can just cut it to whatever I need it for. Before I was using it for like utility belt pouches, but now I can use it for a saddle,
So
or
you're We Talk TV did the same thing. I think both you were like, oh yeah, I use my girlfriend's or my wife's former bags. They're like cutting up. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna root my wife's closet right now. And your video on how you made the saddle, you did like a two part for that dino. One was a wash and the second one was a saddle. Tristan loved it. That was when I was like, hey, I'm gonna have this guy. This is when we did the stream with all of you in there. And he was like, Dad, I just want to watch these tonight with dinner. He's like, I don't watch Simpsons. I want to watch more of this stuff. So he
that's cool.
absolutely loved it. And then today I told him, like, oh, I have the dinosaur guy on. He was like, I'm having the dinosaur guy on tonight. He's like, are we invited? I'm like, not this time, but next time, like, I'll have you come on. So, yeah, what is great and what I love most about toys is the imagination piece. Like, that's really at the core, is like, what can I do with this? Like, it's so cool, and finding it in. And I will say the dinosaurs, the animals, those kind of things too, I never really cared about them before. Like, it was like, I'm like, why would you use a bantha when I can use an ATV or a four-wheeler? Like, why? Like, they're like, this is so much more fun than riding a big shaggy thing that's going 2 miles per hour, right? And it poops and I gotta feed it. But you referenced, I think, Dinotopia in
Yes.
one of your, yes. So I was like, doggone, that's the rule of cool. It's much cooler to have animals than it is ATVs sometimes. So it has opened the aperture, unfortunately, for toy buying for me. Because now I've got these freaking dinosaurs where I'm like, oh man,
And
these are awesome.
you have mechs, right? You have some of the Joy Toy mechs.
All right, hold on, because I'm about to get defensive here, but go ahead. Where are you going?
Imagine you can have somebody in a mech, in one of your scenes, set up after the battle or maybe at the station, and somebody in a mech and a giant mech petting a dinosaur. Like,
Yeah,
think of
that'd
that
be cool.
visual.
Okay.
That 16:9 cinematic shot
Yeah.
of somebody in a mech, kind of like with their head smirking, and they're just petting a dinosaur in this giant thing, whereas the dinosaur's probably only used to like having its knees scratched by its person or whatever, and now it's getting head pets from something that it's equal size to. Alternatively, if one of the dinosaurs got loose on the ship, you do the Ripley thing. You get in the giant forklift mech to stop it. Like, you can't calm that down. It's a bull at a china shop. So what do? You grab a mech.
So that's actually, you brought up the shipping container that went on sale. And it's got the Trosseraptor or whatever it's called there. It's got that shipping container. And that's exactly what I thought. I was like, well, this thing is going to be shipped in as smuggled contraband and get loose in the cargo bay. You know what I mean? Like, that's an awesome story right there. Like, why was this thing here? And now it's running around. And yeah, I love it.
They make great walls too. They make great walls. They're easy to paint, easy to weather, and they're great diorama filler, and also they're great for cargo. You can use them as cargo tokens in some of your gaming. The opportunities there to get a shipment of armor. Well, you can say, oh, the armor shipment came, but you want to put it on the battlefield and have a visual. You can just go, now I've got cover. Also
Look at
cover.
that.
And this is just one that I weathered. I painted. I took
Wow.
little paint markers and just hit the buttons on the panel, which is, there we go, out of frame. and did the ends, put a caution sign. I painted a little bloody handprint, like something horrible
Yeah.
has happened with this
Man,
container.
look at
Did the
that.
top, did the bottom, just so that you can utilize it in various setups, various ways, and it looks good no matter what. And it just all makes a wall, and that's
Now,
something that I'm very happy with.
now hold on. I want to do a comparison here because I grabbed this one. For those who haven't seen, that's his. This is what it looks like before all that, right? So it's blue, it's one solid color. They did some silver weathering on it, but this is the before here, right? And then this is the after here. So you didn't just simply weather it. You completely that's really damn, look at that. The rust too.
And
That's
there are
great.
handhold, like if you notice, there's physical handholds there for climbing up on it, just like a real shipping container.
Yeah.
There's panels, like electronic panels that have buttons, raised buttons that are proud, that stick out, that just
Wow. Huh.
a little paint marker, and you could go over that.
Yeah,
and boom,
yeah,
now you've
yeah.
got buttons, as opposed to, like you said, here's the do a little show and tell.
Oh,
There's
there you go. Here we go.
unpainted and
Side by
painted.
side. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so the same thing with the dinosaurs. Like, I am very like the sculpting. Man, I really hope people who are watching this afterwards are like, why are we talking about dinosaurs? We're not just talking about dinosaurs. We're talking about imagination. Okay,
We're talking
But,
about
like,
dinosaurs in space.
yeah, space, not dino saucers either. But the sculpts in these are really fun. And when I saw your video, I was like, what is he going to do to improve that? He started bringing it out. You started dragging these lines more, and then you took a detail to make it pop like 90s kind of jungle camo. I was like, oh, that looks really cool. And then I started watching, based on your reference, Jurassic Compound, I think is what it is. And he just
Jurassic Park compound. Yep.
yeah, so he did a complete, like, I'm gonna wash it all one color and then do a dry brush. And I was like, look at that sculpt. Like there are details that are hidden here because it's very plain, and they saved on the paint apps, which kept the cost down, which is great. But he did a couple paints. I was like, wow, these are really good toys. These are really good toys. So yeah, we're having a lot of fun with them. And then you also, so I've had this Muldoon hanging around for quite a while, and you made him into a Gamoran gladiator, right? And I think you painted these
Gamorrean
purple.
Hulk. Yep.
Gamoran Hulk. So I like the head. I like the head sculpt as is. I don't see any need to change this. But these doggone hands are fists, and they're too small to Dremel a hole in to fit a gun. I want this to be a soldier. What did you do to mod the fists?
I actually didn't mod the fists, although I do have a set of hands from the Buzz Lightyear line, which are about the right size to swap out. I have a bonus one, an extra one that I picked up for the body, and I'm going to experiment a little bit and see what I can figure out.
Yeah.
There's opportunity there, I think, to make open hands. But right now he does have the fists. But yeah, he's a big Hulk. He's
that fits. Yeah. That fits for your guy. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I just got those Tau guys, and none of them came with fist hands. Thank goodness, because the boys and I were talking about this again. I was like, I don't need any fists from a 1/18 scale. They're not flying around punching. For my superheroes, I need fists because they've got to, they are using their fists. But like for soldiers or any of these other scale characters, I need them to either have, open hands or pistol grip hands. So
yeah, let me get you set up here, and we'll go full screen so that people see what this Gamorrean Hulk is that we're talking about.
Oh, he's super fun.
And there we go. And then if you want to blow that up, we can set this
blowing it up
right here.
Is that the original Rancor from like the Power of the Force line that came out in the 90s? Not the original, I guess.
I think so.
Yeah, I've got that same one. Really fun toy.
I got that at a yard sale for like $5. The guy had completely
Nice.
repainted it on his own as well, which was, phenomenal. But yeah, there's the Gamorrean Hulk.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that figure, just to have a Marvel Star Wars item.
Yeah, it's a great crossover.
And he works with the Chris Pratt Star-Lord that I have there in Gimmick, as a member of the Guardians of Gimmick instead of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's again, I've seen gosh, I think you did a video where you showcased some characters. I've seen your IG, and that one speaks volumes. The Gamorreans, for some reason, I don't know why, like they're so cool, and I was glad to see them in the Boba Fett show. And when you put them on that Hulk body, I was like, there you go, a roided out Gamorrean. That's what I wanted to see. That's awesome.
I think Chris Shaler, Empire Toy Works, he did the Hercules body from the Marvel Universe line and did his Gamorreans on those. Which, you know, again, that's a great big buff guy body.
It is,
so yeah. Just like in the Book of Boba Fett in season 2, those guys were like buff. They weren't the big Porky Pig.
Yeah. That was great.
They were, you know, like look like pro wrestlers. They look like cage fighters. They were big guys.
Yeah. No. What I liked about it too was it's not quite expanded universe. That's an old terminology, expanded universe, right? But what it's interesting is to be able to see what you see as typecasted races, like the Gamorreans, like, oh, they got to be fat guys with an axe and they wear shaggy barbarian gear, and that's what they are. But to see them come out like, no, they don't all have to be that. You know, there's these big guys, and you know, so I was like, oh, that's interesting to see them in a different role or different way to use those same guys. And it's the same thing with your dude who's super jacked and he's a gladiator. I'm like, oh yeah, that's another person from that race that's doing these other things. So it just adds more diversity, not only through storytelling but also like the characterization. So I thought that was really cool.
What's great is he was a scientist before he got hit by cosmic rays and just happened to turn into the Gamorrean Hulk. Those gamma rays get you no matter what.
I love the mystery angle that you have for Gimmick. It's almost like you're telling your own joke kind of thing, because you haven't presented this anywhere. So the mystery is appealing to you, but you know all the answers. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, it's a mystery, but you know what's behind it too. But I love that appeal. And do you ever find yourself creating the question that leads to another question accidentally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I started Gimmick, I had a notion that I was going to have completely original factions. There were going to be no there was going to be no stormtroopers, no Mandalorians, no this, no that. And I kind of was hamstringing myself, and that's where I stopped. And I was like, now wait a minute. I can have Sith Lords in my world. I can have whatever I want because this is my world. So why am I stopping myself? They don't have to. I won't use, I won't make Palpatine again, but I can certainly make, say, my version of Darth Maul or my version of some group of people who found ancient Sith teachings and were
No, you can't. Darth Maul was cut in half, and then he later got. No, you can't. Like, yeah.
The dude was dead, and then came back from the dead, and then was dead again, and then came back from the dead. Yeah. And had a full brother. Like, it's a whole thing. I'm gonna tell my tales.
Yeah.
But like, there's opportunity there, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just do the story that I want to do, and use them in a way that I want to? Maybe they're not terrifying in this world because nobody understands them. They're just spooky old, creepy looking dudes that wear robes and come into town once in a while and get a cargo crate and then leave to the outskirts of the city and live in abandoned buildings. Like, what are they doing? We don't know. We don't care because it's Gimmick and everything's moving and nobody's paying attention. So could they be up to no good? Are they just minding their own business? It's fun. It's different. It's a different thought. Same with Jedi. I introduced my version of Quinlan Voss into the lore because I wanted to have, number one, a Jedi Knight, but also Quinlan Voss is my favorite Star Wars character.
Really?
He was introduced in Dark Horse Comics. He has crossed over into the Disney Clone Wars, which I didn't favor the way they portrayed him in there, but they've since kind of...
Isn't he Old Republic? Isn't that where his timeline was?
Nope, it was Star Wars Republic.
Star Wars Republic. Okay, got it. All right.
And which was Dark Horse, and that was during the Clone Wars time frame, so it filled in a lot of gaps.
Okay.
He was sent by the Jedi Council to basically become a fallen Jedi who was disenfranchised, kind of like Count Dooku, win his favor so that he could kill Palpatine. The Jedi Council was not proud of this, but that is something that they did. In the Clone Wars, they made him kind of like a surfer dude, like, "What's up, Obi-Wan? Let's go on an adventure," which I really didn't dig because to me, the character had always been portrayed as the Wolverine of the Star Wars universe.
Ah, okay.
He's got the memory loss. He's extremely strong. His special power is that he can touch things and retain their memories, and he's a great skilled fighter. He can tap into the dark side of the Force, which he was able to convince Count Dooku and even Palpatine that he was Sith and that he had fallen that far to the dark side. Great storytelling there. Things have changed a little bit. Dark Disciple was a fantastic book. I recommend it. It was supposed to be the storyline that was going to take place in season 7 of the Clone Wars before they had ended it. And I think it was written by, I might be wrong, but I believe it was George Lucas's daughter.
Oh, really?
So, and she had been a writer featured on Clone Wars. She was working with Filoni and all those guys to like tell this. So this story is considered canon. It was supposed to be part of the Clone Wars season, and they toned down the surfer dude and kind of made him more like a Keanu Reeves in Point Break, like, you know, Johnny, you know, being that guy that's like, all right, cool, let's go surf, but like, let's hang out and be, you know, much cooler instead of the totally like, you know, cartoon guy Mikey from Ninja Turtles. He was more like he was more like Raph, best turtle. But
everyone says that. Everyone always votes for. I'm shocked by this. I always thought everyone's favorite was Michelangelo. That's so crazy.
He's
not
fun.
neither of them are my favorites. Yeah, exactly. Like I thought everyone loved the party guy, but everyone likes the bad boy.
You like Leonardo, don't you?
That's right, because he's got swords, and of all the weapons, the katana, like, it's just cutting through anything, man. So I also like the leader characters too. So what do you got here? What?
You know, Quinlan. This is my Quinlan Voss.
Oh wow, look at that.
I made him. This is soft goods. This has wire in it, so I can pose this around if I want. Gave him the kind of disguise so he could stand in a marketplace like this, just like we saw him introduced in episode 1. Because he's in episode 1 and he's in the marketplace where Jar Jar steals the.
Is he really?
Yeah, that's where they took his design from. He was a background character that was sitting there. He had the dreads, or excuse me, the locked hair and the yellow stripe across his face, the tattoo, and he was a tan guy and he was in robes. And then they retroactively made it canon that he was there on a mission, so when he saw Qui-Gon, he couldn't interact with him. But that's where they took the design from. But this, you know, made the robes as wired, but he's got the disguise so he could be, you know, be hidden in the marketplace and you wouldn't see his face when he's looking at you, but also when he's ready for battle, that comes off. I made this armor piece for his forearm that's based off of the armor that he has in the comics out of styrene. Cut it out of styrene, snapped out the middle, wrapped it with tape. That's just regular masking tape. And then I hard coated it with Mod Podge before I painted it, and then Mod Podged it again. So it creates, you know, basically like a hard, this isn't going to chip, it's not going to tear, it's not going to break.
Right. It seals it.
But it adds that 3D texture to what's there. It gives it more realism. I wish this camera had a little bit more better definition, but is what it is. There's pictures on Instagram. Same with this forearm. And this was a Hawkeye body from the Marvel Universe line. This was movie Hawkeye. So I used the sleeveless version of him because I liked it. Gave him his tattoos from the comics, his signature tattoos.
Dang.
I gave him his piece of armor that has the gold starburst on it and put that on a shoulder piece of armor from a different figure all together as one, and it's removable. Some more soft goods and some more of that tape wrapping that makes it appear that it's, you know, sculpted in. I gave him, you know, a plastic scarf around the neck, but also went ahead and used Rey's cape from the second sequel to basically fill that out and add some soft goods to it. I tacked on some more soft goods from his Jedi robe underneath his tabards to make it look like maybe he had his robe at the time, but now he needs it. Kept his blaster, and I gave him Count Dooku's lightsaber because the story that I told of how he got here, he interacted with a...
Oh no!
You're fine. Interacted with a Sith artifact while he was fighting Count Dooku and was ripped through the multiverse and wound up on outside of Gimmick. So he wandered through the desert for 40 days and, you know, now he's here and now he kind of keeps to himself and just observes, and sometimes he has to dispense a little bit of justice or peace and does so and then tries to just fade back into the background.
So I don't know if this will be insulting or complimentary, but when you showed that picture of that character on Instagram recently, I saw the character or the toy and was like, oh, he added a couple things. Little did I know, little did I know how much you had actually recreated basically from scratch. You basically scratch built that guy. But I think that speaks to how good the quality is that I just saw, oh, he added a few things onto what I assumed was that Star Wars character to begin with. So
I appreciate that.
that's phenomenal. My custom work nowadays goes to head swapping, and I'm pretty proud of that. I was able to cut off a peg. Here it's hold on.
Who's the head on that?
So this is from one of the Halo. Man, this light.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
I know
Halo
who you mean.
Brutes. Yeah, and I just put some hot glue here and put it on there so he can still move his head about with some hot glue. And I was like, hey, that works. I've got a pilot with the Brute head on there, and that's about where I'm going right now with my custom.
He looks cool.
Yeah. So for you, building something from the ground up, I'm like, oh man. Now, you know what the straw hat in the sci-fi setting reminded me of, and I this is a deep cut here, but have you ever read Lone Wolf and Cub, the comic book? It's a
absolutely.
yeah, okay. Yeah. So they later on in the 2000 early gosh, when was it? It had to be 99. They did a Lone Wolf and Cub 2001. And it's sci-fi,
What?
it's post-apocalyptic. There's a virus that wiped out everything, and it's very Last of Us, actually, now that I think about it, because this little wolf, he's got to get a little girl who's got the cure to the virus through this post-apocalypse setting. And there's corporations that are after him, very Wayland corporations are after him, and it was a short run too. There wasn't a lot of them, but like here he is with the little girl in his backpack, very Last of Us. So and they kept some of the aesthetics of ancient Japan, but also just kind of modernized a few things in there too. So it's really fun. I have no idea what the availability for these comics are, but as you were speaking of Voss in that setting, I was like, oh, that's like Lone Wolf 2100. Really, really worth finding and really worth reading if you get a chance. So
yeah, no, that certainly sounds like it's right up my alley. Because again, with my fiction, I love to write post-apocalyptic fiction. I could do sci-fi, but I prefer to show, not tell with those. I like to build my little worlds and make my toys and setups. But as far as like writing goes, reading, a lot of the TV that I digest and movies I digest are zombies, post-apocalyptic, end of the world, those types of things where it's, people put up in.
Let me ask you a totally divergent question, right? It has nothing to do with this, the toys at all. So I don't like watching those anymore. I don't like, because I feel it's a negative context. It's a negative outlook. Why do you think those are so much more popular now? Dystopians are wildly popular. Whether it's Maze Runner, whether it's a show, why is that so popular now?
I think because a lot of the generation that's consuming those products, those movies, those books, those TV shows, sees that as comical as it is, with the zombie trope or with the the cannibal virus, things like that. I think a lot more people, especially my age, kind of see that coming down the pipe with the way that the world is going. So it's almost like a dark humor reflection of that, and kind of like we watch it and go, haha, could you imagine? And then you look at your buddy next to you and go, so what would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do? And I used to do volunteer work with a group called Zombie Squad based out of St. Louis, and we would teach disaster preparedness with the allegory of zombie apocalypse.
Sure,
if you were prepared for a zombie apocalypse, you were prepared for anything. Blizzard, hurricane, tornado. We did a lot of great work, a lot of blood drives, a lot of donations to charitable organizations, and it's always been fun for me. And for me, it's an exercise in watching. As entertaining it is, as I'm watching it, I'm going, okay, like I wouldn't do that. That wouldn't work. Take out the stairs. And so that's just for me. That's why I go to it. But also, like, there's that little.
Did you say take out the stairs?
Yeah, take out the stairs.
That's Max Brooks' zombie survival guide reference, right? Yeah, take out the stairs.
He is a tremendous human being. I had the opportunity to meet him.
Oh, really?
I went and saw him speak at RPI College. Max opened up the floor, and this was when I was at the very beginning of my Zombie Squad journey, and I kind of thought I had every answer, and so I raised my hand, and he asked him a question, and gave a couple of opinions, and he's like, my goodness, that's great. Stand up. Oh no! Now I'm at RPI College. There's probably like 300-400 people in this auditorium, gymnasium it was. So I stand up. He goes, "What's your name?" I said, Famine. He goes, "Famine. Everybody take a look at Famine." And now I feel 300 people turn and look at me, and he goes, "If anybody has any questions or needs anything answered after the show, go see him." Everybody laughed. I had a great time, laughed. So it was very funny. And I went to sign my book, and he was like, "Oh, thank God you came in the line." He's like, I didn't embarrass you." I was like, "No, that was great. That was hilarious. Your dad's Mel Brooks. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah, yeah,
expect
yeah. Of
you to
course.
have this great sense of humor." And he's like, I told him Zombie Squad had worked with him in a couple locations, and so he immediately knew what I was talking about. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I did something." Signed my books for me. He wrote my books. He's like, "You're so ready. Thanks so much." Blah blah blah. And we just talked, and we had a great time. And I was literally the last person in line, so I had essentially what was an unlimited amount of time if I wanted
Yeah.
to speak with him, and he was more than happy to do it. Great guy, great books. Just published a new book last year called De-Evolution, and it's about Bigfoots instead of zombies or anything like that. It's about a Bigfoot attack, and the book's phenomenal. The audiobook is also phenomenal. It's
Huh.
narrated by she plays Louise on Bob's Burgers. She's the main
Oh, okay.
character. She
Okay.
voices, and then her brother is played by Nathan Fillion, and Nathan
Oh,
Fillion does the
wow.
voice work on it. World War Z, the audiobook for that is also phenomenal. It has a full
Yeah.
all-star cast. Mark Hamill does a voice for 3 of the chapters, I believe. They tell the tale of his character throughout 3 sections.
No way. He was so I listened to that years ago. Gosh, I'd go back and re-listen to that now. Huh.
Brad Pitt is in one of the stories. Nathan Fillion, Mark Hamill. Like I said, there's just a laundry list of names. She played Scully on X-Files.
I only know her Scully. It's okay. Yeah. I don't know who that
I feel terrible because that's one of my girlfriend's favorite shows. It's a great show. But anyway, she narrates one of the stories, the story about the pilot that goes down in the swamp of Louisiana.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's just like everybody is stellar, and his storytelling is so great. But sorry to go off on that tangent. It's
No,
just
no,
that
it's fine.
my very fond memory of me meeting Max Brooks and him, getting a good joke on me, and then just being the kindest, most generous person to spend his time and talk and, sign books and everything for free. Didn't charge for a signature or anything like that. It was just very cool. And I have my copy as a first edition hardcover. It was the first printing. I went out and
Oh,
bought it
wow.
immediately because
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, World War Z? Cool. That sounds great. I don't even know what it's about yet. Let me open up the back of the book and read it. And then it was zombies, and I'm like, sold, done. $20. Here you go. Let me get this out of the store. And then I've read it over and over and over again. Of course, I'm not one of those people that's super precious about their books, but that's one where I'm like, we're just gonna set this here and we're gonna listen to the audiobook this week instead.
Of course. Well, you have a story and the signature behind it too that has a little more memento to it behind just a reread, like your Jurassic Park that you said you read like 300 times or whatever. So, hey, so there was a question I wanted to ask earlier too. So someone had said in the chat in the show, like, "Hey, I'll never be done with my station or my whatever," and that we both agreed that that's good. But do you find that it evolves? So you're adding to it constantly, but is the station itself beyond just add-ons? Is it evolving and changing? So, for example, you have your noodle market set up there, and Voss has come and gone. Your Darth Mauls have come and gone. Has that noodle set up? Does that evolve in and of itself as well?
Absolutely. I have notions of stories and where things will go. I've rearranged this set out a couple of times. I like to keep stalls and things like that modular, whereas more solid buildings will be solid buildings. But the great thing about that is as long as I don't tack anything to the walls, like if I use blue tack to hold it there or something like that, I can go in and change it if I just wake up one day and I'm like, I want to go in there and rearrange this and make it something else. Maybe these guys bought a traveling ship and they want to use that, so I'll set them aside and do something else. Like, I've got ideas. And then also, like, because the noodle bar is actually being built into one of these storage containers, it's going to be, I'm just going to put it on a slate riser. I'm going to cut it out just like you would the people that use the box, the corrugated containers. It's just going to be a little noodle bar with, steam pipes coming out and everything and on boxes. But then, who knows in the future, it could be set up higher on a different level for people with rocket packs to come in, or there could be a walking plank in front of it now instead of it being down here. He got a little money, and so he starts to move up, tries to get higher, closer to the top, closer to where the money is. The next level of gimmick is going to be more technologically advanced. So there's going to be more, I want to say, cyberpunk kind of tech noir, where it's more like, I can't even begin to describe the idea that I have in my head, but there's going to be cyberpunk elements, but there's also going to be elements of like 1940s New York City, where it's more fancy but also it's still 1940s New York City, and it's the
Well,
palpable nature of New York that it's a little dirty and a little bit harder.
yeah. So it's not crystal clean, but it's funny that sci-fi will end up like Fallout's a perfect example. Like Fallout went way forward, but it also took all its aesthetics from late 1940s, early 50s, right? So like that's the aesthetics.
Retrofuturism, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So and then now you're blending in cyberpunk, which is the I think that genre is the growing of sci-fi as cyberpunk right now, whether it's stemmed from the video game or just all the pop culture. I think cyberpunk is the way of the future for sci-fi genre. So you're not just building within the one ecosystem, you're going to continue leveling up, so to speak, as you actually level up gimmick as well too.
And I will be exploring outside of Gimmick.
Ooh, nice.
I've drawn a map. There are 4 set regions outside of Gimmick that are essentially people aren't aware of. If there were tales, it's been passed along so much and forgotten. Especially with the influx of new people coming in, people just don't want to spend time talking about the old ways. They're more interested in the new, the now, the things that are appearing out in the middle of the desert that they can see from Gimmick, and everybody races out to try and get it to sell the next thing that they've found.
Huh.
There are places outside. There are homes in the desert, little micro cities, micro towns that are just clans. There is a swampy forest area. There is an Arctic area on one of the poles of the planet that's extremely cold and extremely frigid, and the people that live there have adapted a very hardy lifestyle. And once these groups start to travel and migrate, now again, what causes them to travel and migrate? Great mystery, because if they've been living at these locations for eons of years, however long it may be, and have developed clans and have developed like live-in worlds, what would make them want to move? And why are they migrating and crossing paths now? People are starting to come and trade and appear, and like it's like, holy cow, like this whole line of dinosaurs with people on the back like almost look like Tusken Raiders just came. We've never seen this before. And they're saying that they're from the desert. Like we look out the window from Gimmick, even from the closest points to the sand line, and it's just sand as far as you could see. There's nothing beyond the dunes. Ships travel out. Ships go up. They don't travel that way. They just leave and go into space because there's nothing there. Well, when's the last time anybody went driving? So it'll be an interesting thing, but I have an idea for some walkers, and people will be utilizing stilts when they come into the city, so that provides a new problem for them, because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of hanging wires and things like that. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a big exchange of technologies and trade, and I love the idea of evolving that and telling the story, and also with all these people coming Gimmick, the upper levels may not be too keen on letting all these new people in, and so there could be a class war. There could be a big class push to occupy more space than
I can't have these radical changes upsetting the status quo. I've got
right.
my overhead to look, or my revenues to look after here. So,
Yeah.
does the same mysterious mechanic of people from like a Darth Maul appearing at Gimmick or showing up to Gimmick, or a Voss, or whoever, or Star Lord, does that still apply to the outskirts as well, or is that just a
Yes.
Gimmick phenomenon? Oh, interesting. Okay.
I will tell you, I have a version of Dr. Octopus, Dr. Otto Octavius from the Spider-Man lore,
Yeah.
who will be somebody that lives in the swamp area. So his mechanic of getting around, his technology isn't necessarily based on using arms to, do crime or work in a science lab. They're more to keep him up off of the wet ground and be able to maneuver through the areas that he needs to get to in this, where everybody else does. Is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? I haven't decided yet. That's something also I wanted to play with, is there are characters who have been good and bad in the comics and redeemed themselves, and there are other characters who are absolutely terrible. I have Rhino from the Marvel Universe line,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to be making him into Mudhorn. He's going to be a Mudhorn based character, like from the Mandalorian, that giant single-tusked hairy rhino, but instead of the rhino, he's going to be a Mudhorn. That's going to be his gimmick. Just things like that. And now, is he going to be a good guy or a bad guy? I don't know. Is he hired muscle for the mayor of the city? Is he one of the mobster? Is he a goon for one of the mobsters? Is he a gladiator that's paid by one of the restaurants to go and be their champion to get them better advertising and more press time so that they can get more customers in? I haven't decided yet, but I get these little pieces. Like I said, I create problems.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
in creating the
And,
problem, I find a solution.
and I'm sure you will build all the kits and pieces of flair you need to that guy where he will be unrecognizable to me, and you'll explain in detail, like, well, I added this because this is his backstory, this is his grandma's, and this is utility. Like, I love the detail building into the characters and how you adapt them to these stories. So it's just bad. I honestly, I'd love to just hang out and be like, let's talk about this guy now. Today, we're going to talk about this one character and how you added these things in here. That's great. And then, gosh, I had another question I was burning to ask you here too. Okay, so this is, I don't know if, I don't want to alarm you or anything or anyone who's watching it, but this is playing with your toys. I don't know if you knew that or not, but this is when you have these things.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I don't know if you.
I think I read that on MySpace. I think.
Yeah, that's the MySpace, a credible source, not Wikipedia. MySpace of all places. Good. Oops. Hold on, my oh man. My phone came unplugged there and it started running up. Yeah, so that is, and I want people to play with their toys, right? Like I love hearing how people play with their toys, and that's why I kind of led the evolution. Like, does it evolve? If you are changing, if you're not just setting up and be like, and that's where that's going to go for the rest of its life. If you're evolving a thing around an internal narrative, that is playing, and I love it. And again, I'm not talking negatively about anyone who does just set up things. It's fantastic. That's not what this is supposed to be. It's just what I find most appealing is the evolving and playing. So
yeah, I'm as much as I love things that are the same, I do enjoy change. I will change these posters out, once or twice a year.
Oh yeah,
just swap them for something else that fits the frame, just to give myself something different to look at, to keep the space fresh and new. Same goes with gimmick, whereas I may add in new lights, or I may take some lights out and put something different in. And also, I'm gonna share a secret with toy collectors. I'm gonna share something with the people that set things up. If you take them down to clean them, you don't have to put them back exactly as they were. You can put it somewhere else, and that's a great thing, is when I take these guys down to dust them off, because with the cats, and we do live near the railroad, so there is a bit of dust. When I clean the figures, I can rearrange them and put them in different places. I can create new scenarios, so you do not have to set it up and then put it right back again once you've dusted it off. It's cool if you want to, but it's fun.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, man. It's a no-brainer. So that's one problem I don't have, because all my stuff is either in bins or being played with on the floor, scattered around. There is nothing in here is collecting dust. It's either being utilized or it's in a bucket ready to get pulled out and dumped out. So
that's so cool. It's awesome that your boys get to play with your stuff. And I know a lot of guys that are collectors, older dudes. I say older dudes, not in any negative way, but like, they have children. So to me, they're just an older individual, and they have their own figures and their own collectibles, and they don't let their kids play with them. And like, part of me gets it. Like, that's one of the reasons I'm child free. I don't have kids, is I don't want them to touch my stuff. But if I did, like when my nephews come over, I'm anything that I put out where they can see, 100%, I'm okay with them out there playing. Like, that's the reason. It's like, it's a toy at the end of the day. Like, I get it. I see people with Gundams and stuff. I get that. Like, woo, that's a
model.
That's a model. But like, if I have 15 Velociraptors and they're all sitting there on a table, like, why wouldn't I let a little kid just have the time of their life with them? But their hands are always so sticky. I digress. But like, it's so cool that your boys get to play with these things, and they get to be involved in this aspect of the hobby, and like, see a positive adult male role model who plays with toys, and they know that it's okay to use their imagination and exercise that as an adult, and that's really cool and really healthy.
Well, thanks for that. And that's what I'm trying to establish to them, is like, hey, whatever you like, I want you to shut down any of the voices that say you can't do those things, because I didn't listen to those voices, but I didn't deal with them appropriately at that age either. So the things I liked, I either hid, but I still did them, or I overreacted to it. I'm like, you don't have to do that. You can be yourself. That's so cliche, be yourself. But You can enjoy these things, and I'm trying to teach them to insulate against from that negativity of telling them, well, you can't enjoy those things. I'm like, man, you're going to be miserable later on if you don't enjoy the things that you want to. You're gonna be so miserable later on. So, but what's funny is when you said that with sharing. So Finn is 5, and he is adamant. He's like, I'm not gonna have kids. I'm like, wow, set that in stone. He's like, I'm not getting married. I'm gonna have kids. I'm like, okay. I don't care. You don't have to. You can be happy and single. Go for it, man. But I was like, but why? He's like, they make a lot of noise. He's like, you're 5 and you're like, kids make noise, huh, Finn? You were the kid who's just running around in his underwear screaming down the hallway. You're saying they make noise. Yeah, he's like, they make noise. And I was like, okay. He's like, also, I don't want to share my toys with them. It's like, but I share my toys with you all the time. It's like, yeah, I know, but we break your stuff and we make a mess, and I don't want to do that with my kids. So I don't want kids. I'm like, wow, you're a set, man. And he's adamant. Like, whatever in-laws or anybody comes over, like, you still don't want kids? He's like, no, I'm not going to change my mind. I'm like, dang, man. So I think it's hilarious. Like, he's already set because he's
locked it. He doesn't. He's like,
yeah. It's like, these are mine. I love them more than the possibility of having a child. So I am done. So
if sharing is caring, he does not care.
He does not. His F cups is empty, man. So, no, and so it's really enjoyable too. Like, the one comment, I took some stuff outside and I made a video and took stuff outside, and this guy made a comment. He's like, my OCD is going insane right now. Did you lose anything? I was like, honestly, if I'm by myself, I usually am pretty good about policing stuff up. I have the occasional spill, or like, I was actually walking outside yesterday to go find my sandals. I'm like, oh crap, there's this helmet. I was like, oh, whoops. So I'll lose that stuff. With the boys, there is a risk factor that they'll break things. But with training, I know that sounds weird, but you teach them how to play with toys, right? Just like we all made mistakes when we were kids. Like, I don't know how many G.I. Joe thumbs I snapped or broke the vehicle pegs off in the foot holes, which I still don't know how I did it as a kid. Like, that seems really hard to do, but there's tons of pegs in my G.I. Joe feet. So teaching them how to actually manipulate the things so they're playing with them appropriately. I haven't had any problems with that. The only problems that randomly come up are an accessory gets lost or somebody gets stepped on. I'm like, okay, like that's it, you know what I mean? Like, that's the cost of having fun, and man, that's an easy price to pay. Like, that was easy for me to do. So, and like, I came home from work 2 days ago and immediately was accosted at the door. Tristan's like, I got something set up, it's downstairs, I just need blah blah blah. And then he was like, but I don't want to be the bad guys. I'm like, dude, just tell me what the plot is and I'll go find some bad guys to fill it in. So that I like changed on my uniform, and I was like, what do you want to do? He's like, there's this artifact and there's this, and I want to be this hero. He set up the conflict. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to find some villains, man. And I just went villains and we added in, and like Finn pulled off whoever he wanted. I was like, dude, this was 45 minutes equal to when I was a kid and getting on the floor and losing track of time or losing track of whatever I had done that day. And I was like, this is awesome, man. I wish everyone could experience this.
Yep. I used to do that. I would mix worlds and just have the time of my life, and you would just, like you said, you'd lose track of time. You would have no idea what time it was. Everything just falls away and you're playing with your toys and having fun. And that's like, for me, I get that joy when I set things up in the displays or I'm getting ready to take pictures. But for me especially, it's solving the little problems that I make in creating characters for this world. Like, to me, that's the super fun of it. Like, I needed a gunslinger. I made a gunslinger. I wanted a Mandalorian. I made a Mandalorian. Like, that's just fun to me. And then I, create, all right, well, where's this dude live? All right, outskirts. Okay, so he's going to want to keep sand off of his gear. He's going to need something to keep the sand, just let that
but
run in my mind.
Yeah, that's all those gears and juices flowing in there. And that's like, it's like a dog with a bone,
Yeah, I will lose track of time too, to where I won't even realize it's 11:30 at night or 12 o'clock at night. And I'll just be like, oh yeah, I got that job tomorrow that I have to go do.
This work burden.
Yeah.
No, and I appreciate. So one of the things that I do by myself now is the game mechanics piece, more of it. And I've started pulling the boys into that, and that's more of, if they ever, I'm like, I don't want to make voices and go pew anymore. I'm like, okay, well, we've transitioned to, like, it's a game instead of using miniatures, to use action figures too. So that's part of the branching. But also for me, sometimes I don't know what the results are, right? Like, so if I set up a thing or I set up a world or whatever, I'm like, I don't know what would happen. So it's fun to have like a dice mechanic to be like, oh, okay, well, these people are dead and this is now the new order or whatever it is. So that's that randomization, much like how you described or talked about the mystery leading to a new mystery. For me, it's the randomization of being like, okay, that happened. Now, how do I react to it? Kind of thing. So, again, very D&D RPG kind of inspired or driven mechanic, I guess. So.
Yeah, it's play. I used to, when I was in high school, I did Vampire the Masquerade, back when that was the White Wolf game was very popular.
Yeah.
We would stay after school through the detention hour. They would call it. The detention was 2 hours, so school ended at 1:45 or whatever, and our school day would end at 4:30. We'd get on the bus and go home. So we had that time, and the librarian was super cool. She'd just be like, "Yeah, just don't break anything, and since you guys are the only people here, you can be as noisy as you want. Just, if you really start yelling, I'll ask you to quiet down." So we had the library to ourselves, or if the library was busy, they'd let us use the cafeteria. So we'd just play Vampire, and it's paper and pencil RPG. I still have my dice. I have both sets of my dice. I cherish those because they're very fond memories. But, it's just another way to play. And like you said, you're using toys. Why not? You've got them. You like playing with toys to begin with. You like playing an RPG. Peanut butter and chocolate, put it together, you get a Reese's cup. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
That's awesome, man. Hey, I feel like we could keep talking probably for another 2 hours, but this is an hour
we could.
Of recording, so I'm gonna cut it here, man. But before we get off, is there anything you want to draw attention to? Is anyone want to steer track or a shout or anything like that?
Absolutely. People can check out on Instagram Famine Studios X, on YouTube it's Famine Studios. Look up both of those, give it a follow. I have a Ko-Fi where I'm doing behind the scenes content that I'm sharing out. It's super cheap. It's $2 a month. If you want to go check that out, it's a great way to support the channel. If you have something you want to send to Gimmick, or you have something that you think I might be interested in, please feel free to reach out to me on socials. Glad to talk to you. I love chatting and chopping it up about toys, as you've seen me here do for about 2.5 hours tonight with you. So it's always a good time. So if anybody wants to reach out, absolutely do the thing. And that's where you can find me.
Yeah, man. So again, just to follow the plug, highly recommend it. I enjoyed the content, really enjoyed the videos too, and my boys really enjoy it as well. So next time you're coming over here, I promise them, like, hey, you will talk to the dinosaur guy. They don't know all these channels, so I have to identify by like a thing. You know what I mean? So
the fact that I am identified as the dinosaur guy makes me very happy. So.
Is that it? Yeah, that's all. Okay, I'll let them know. So, all right, man. Hey, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for hanging out afterwards.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. Can't wait till we do it again.
All right.
All right.